The 18th century was truly an age of revolution. It was an age of fire and revolt. France rose in 1789, shattering the crown of kings. America's revolution in 1776 stabbed at Britain's power. Haiti's uprising proved that no chain could bind human freedom forever. But hidden from Europe's gaze, another revolution was unfolding. Not in Paris, not in Boston, not in Port-au-Prince, but in Ilorin, deep in the heart of Yoruba land. This was no ordinary conflict. It began as a rebellion, led by Kakanfo of Oyo.
Afonja?
Yes, Afonja, a general feared across the land, but pride, betrayal, and ambition would twist it into something far greater, the Ilorin Revolution. Long before colonial borders, Yoruba land stretched across the savannah, forest, and down to the coast, a land of thriving towns and bustling markets. But by the 19th century, the once proud city of Ilorin became a theater of fire and conquest. But how did this decline begin? Ilorin was an extension of the Oyo Empire. Under Alaafin Abiodun, peace reigned. The empire flourished economically. But Abiodun made a fatal mistake. While strengthening the purse, he neglected the sword. At his death in 1789, the empire stood wealthy but defenseless. Into this fragile balance stepped Afonja, the warlord of Ilorin, ambitious and restless. And Aole, Abiodun's successor, inherited a throne already trembling beneath him. In a desperate bid for loyalty, Aole ordered Afonja to war, a mission no man could return from. But instead of dying, Afonja turned. Along with top commanders, he marched on the heart of Oyo itself. Trapped and betrayed, Alaafin Aole chose death over disgrace. With him, the empire's unity was shattered. The great chiefs returned to their bases. Fagbohun returned to Jabata, Onikoyi returned to Ikoyi, and Afonja returned to Ilorin, each declaring autonomy, their independence. What had been one empire was now a land of independent war camps, all refusing to pay homage or send any tribute to Alaafin in Oyo. In Ilorin, alliances were shifting like desert sands. Solagberu, once Afonja's friend and ally, had embraced Islam. Through him, Afonja was introduced to a wandering scholar, Alimi. This quiet figure would soon become the most dangerous man in Ilorin. Alimi's counsel was subtle but sharp. He reshaped Afonja's army, filling its ranks with strangers, warriors from the north, men who owed loyalty not to Yoruba land, not to Oyo, but to Alimi's cause. Afonja placed the leadership of his army under his trusted Hausa slaves, Bugare, and his son, Agbonri, and his brother, Lashikpa. With Alimi's guidance, Afonja's army was swelled with Jamals. These are fierce strangers from the north. Under his banner, they shattered Oyo's punitive force, led by Ojo Aburumaku. Although Onikoyi fought under Ojo Aburumaku, he played double agent in the enemy camp. Towns like Igbo, who dared side with Oyo, were punished without mercy. And Ilorin, once a frontier outpost, grew fatter, bolder, and deadlier. Flush with victories, Afonja trusted his new allies, the Jomons, Alimi's fighters. But trust can be poison. With Kakanfo's protection, they grew bolder, their arrogance spilling into the streets of Ilorin. Soon, no household was safe. Goats vanished in the night. Doors were kicked open. Markets trembled at their presence. The Jomons roamed like lords of Ilorin, while Afonja, blind with pride, looked the other way. Then came Fagbohun of Jabata, stern, fearless, a friend who would not flatter. He stood before Afonja and thundered his warning. Your Jomons will destroy you. They will tear Ilorin apart. His words cut deep, but truth is a blade the proud cannot bear. Humiliated, Afonja's pride boiled into rage. He sent Bugare. The order was simple. Fagbon must not leave Ilorin alive. But fate spared Fagbon. He slipped past Afonja's trap, returning to Jabata with his life, but leaving behind a shattered brotherhood. From that day, Afonja stood more alone than ever, tied to Alimi's Jamas, blind to the storm rising in his own house. Disaster struck. Lashipa, Afonja's brother, fell to death. The pillar of his strength was gone. Soon after, his only son, Agborin, followed. Afonja was left exposed, stripped of blood and defense. In the silence of his house, he soliloquized, replaying every mistake that had led him here. Desperate, he sent word to Solagberu, but his old friend turned his back, refusing his plea. In Japata, Fagbon did the same. Once comrades in rebellion, now deaf to his cries.
With nowhere left to turn, Afonja reached for his last hope, the Oyo of Oke-Suna. The only one bold enough to storm Ilorin's gates, but the Jamas heard of it, and their patience ran out. That night, the Jamas gathered under Alimi and his sons. The verdict was clear: Afonja must die, and Ilorin would be reborn as a Muslim stronghold. The Sokoto Jihad had finally entered Yoruba land. They drew their plans carefully: how to trap the Kakanfo, cut him off from every Yoruba ally, and finish what they began. By dawn, every street to Afonja's compound was sealed. Escape was no longer an option. Torches flew. Flames licked the roof of his house. The sky turned red with betrayal. But Afonja was no coward. With a handful of loyal men, he burst out, roaring into battle one final time. Spears cracked, swords flashed. The Kakanfo carved through enemies like a storm, his name still striking terror. Yet, one by one, his warriors fell. Still, Afonja stood, refusing to yield. But then it came. A spear through his back. Afonja staggered, fell to his knees, and the Kakanfo of Oyo was no more. The Jamas could hardly believe their luck. At daybreak, his lifeless body lay in the streets. No honors, no kin, only silence. In the palace, the Jamas rejoiced. Their enemy was gone. Their new order was born. Soon, the streets of Ilorin returned to normal, but with a new rhythm, a new law, a new fate etched into its heart. Across Yoruba land, chiefs argued, stunned at the fall of their warlord. But in Ilorin, there was no confusion. Yoruba Muslim chiefs and Fulani leaders struck a pact. The city became an emirate, Fulani at its head, Yoruba Muslims at its side. The Ilorin Revolution was complete. The Fulani unleashed terror, burning towns across northern Yoruba land. The land trembled at the thunder of oaths. Streams of refugees poured southwest, carrying nothing but grief. Their cries echoed in the Yoruba forest, finding fragile refuge in places like Ife's Modakeke or among the Egbas in Ijaye and in the rising town of Ibadan. Ilorin enslaved those who refused Islam, even in lands once guarded by Oyo's crown. Chains replaced old loyalties. Streams of refugees poured southwest. Chains stretched endlessly north as captives were mashed, their tears sold in Sokoto markets. Drunk on power in Ilorin, Solagberu dreamed of ruling the whole Yoruba land with Fulani steel at his back. In Ikoyi, Onikoyi steeled himself. The walls were raised, the drums of war sounded. Beside him stood the Olofa and his Ilari, Ashegbe, loyal, cunning, and watchful. When dawn broke, Solagberu came, not alone, but with the full wrath of Ilorin behind him. Ikoyi was ringed with steel and fire, yet Within those walls, defiance still breathed. Under the cover of the night, Ashegbe slipped through the siege lines to Ilorin Emirate, bearing a message of deceit and desperation. Onikoyi seeks allegiance, but Solagberu stands in the way. At the Emir's courts, Ashegbe's words struck like thunder. Could Solagberu be defying Ilorin's will? A message flew back. Recall your troops at once. But Solagberu, proud and unyielding, refused. He would not bow, not even to Ilorin. A second message came, this time to the army. At the gates of Ikoyi, Solagberu turned to find himself alone. His men had melted away, obeying Ilorin's commands. The hunter was now the hunted. Solagberu returned to Oke-Suna with the tensed atmosphere between him and Emir of Ilorin. It became clear only one of them would be the supreme leader of Ilorin. The Emir soon saw treachery taking root. Orders went out. Oke-Suna was to be surrounded and crushed before it grew bold. The Fulani army stormed the hills of Oke-Suna. The battle was swift and fierce. Solagberu's men fought with courage, but the tide turned against them. Hunger gnawed. The people of Oke-Suna fed on insects and bark of trees. Then at last, Oke-Suna fell. Solagberu was slain where he stood, proud, defiant, and alone. In his final moments, Solagberu must have remembered Afonja, the brother he betrayed, the friend he sacrificed for faith. He had chosen the bond of religion over the bond of blood. Yet, when death came, his brothers in faith saw no creed, only an obstacle to ambition. Was the Ilorin Revolution a holy war, or the climax of a conquest disguised in sacred robes?